Sandra! Welcome to our social experiment!
Yay! Meow! Welcome again!
Hello! We have chosen to violate the norm of personal space by asking people 2 personal questions. And more specifically, what we did in our experiment was that we went to people and we asked them, wow, what you're drinking or what you're eating looks so good. Can I please have a taste or can I please have a sip? That was the norm that we violated involving personal space.
In our experiment, we went around in Tia and then we asked complete strangers, and we tried to make it half boys and half girls that we asked, and then in varied age groups.
Boom, 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 hypothesis!
Okay, so what I expect to find during this experiment is that all of them will say no and maybe look a little startled, but I think that all will say no to letting her have a taste or a bite of their food.
It's vlogging time, guys! Okay, so now, before our social experiment, I predict that most people will say no when I ask them for their food or a sip of their drink, but I also think that it will depend on the type of food they're eating. But I am super interested to find out, so stay tuned. See you later. Yay! So, how did it go? Whoa! Okay, so now we have performed our social experiment, which was really interesting to do. And I was the one who approached the people, and I thought that it was the easiest to approach people when they were in a group. It felt less awkward for me to approach them when I saw there were more people together, rather than someone going by themselves and having maybe their headphones on. It felt like I was disturbing them if I would approach them. And it was also much easier to approach people that were coming our way, rather than going up to someone who was obviously having a meal, sitting at a bench or sitting at a restaurant. That felt quite disrespectful, so we only chose to approach people who were coming towards us on the street. And the people that were most difficult to approach were the ones who looked a bit stressed, looked a bit irritated, like they were going somewhere. And my own emotional response, I actually managed to stay quite confident and just went up to them and asked this question as if it would have been any other normal question, such as, where is the toilet? So I managed to stay very confident, and I never laughed, which was really good, and I was just very straightforward and very clear with my question. And it was very fun to do, and very interesting responses. Okay, so Sandra, you, as the observer, what was your emotional response when I approached these people?
Okay, I must admit it was a bit funny when Chloe approached all these people, because I got to see the responses and it was hilarious. Many people were like, what are you even doing here? Why are you talking to me? What are you asking me about? And one woman, the first one we asked, she actually said, no, this is mine. And it was super fun to watch. Very interesting.
Okay, so now afterwards the experiment, we actually received some interesting responses, and I will tell you a little bit about them. So the first one was 2 males. I think they were about 45 years old, and they had a basket of raspberries, and I asked them, they were Americans, tourists, I believe, and they had a basket of raspberries, and I asked them, oh, could I have one? They were like, yes, of course, take one. And then I think it was the father of the one guy who said, what about a kiss here? And I was like, no, I only want the raspberry, thank you though. And then there were 2 other guys that I approached who had ice cream, and I asked them, oh, could I have a taste of your ice cream? And before they responded to that, they asked me about my age, how old are you? And I just ignored that, and I just said, can I have a taste of your ice cream? And they said, yes, of course. They even gave me, one wasn't even open, it was brand new. Yes, take it. I was like, whoa, thank you. And then a third one was really funny. I went up to some tourists from the south of Sweden, and I asked them, oh, could I have a sip of your Coke? And then he asked his wife, it was fine. He was like, oh, but I mean, can I give this to her, or do you want it? She was like, no, I think I want it. I was like, oh, okay. So those were some interesting responses that we received.
However, there were some lack of responses in this experiment, because we walked around in a park and then we asked many people who ate ice creams, and then many of them just didn't respond, and then they referred to buying an ice cream at a store instead. And it's very different because eating an ice cream and tasting an ice cream is more unsanitary than taking a raspberry, as Chloe talked about earlier. So yeah, I think that might be why some of them just said no or didn't respond at all, because it was quite unsanitary, and there was an ice cream shop like right close by.
Yeah. So I think it kind of depends, like, the location, but also
Yes.
what you're eating. If you can just take one bite and not touch the other food, or if you really have to lick an ice cream, it's quite unsanitary.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a table of some of the responses we received. So on the left column, you can see the gender. In the middle, you can see the response. And on the right, a small explanation of what happened. So prepare yourself for 5 more seconds of awkward silence in the class. Yay! Conformity time! Yay! Now we're going to link this to some theories. Solomon Asch conducted an experiment in 1951 to investigate what extent a social pressure can affect a person to conform. The experiment was conducted by students who contributed to a vision test. One participant did not know anything about the experiment. Meanwhile, 7 other participants had received information before. They had all agreed that in advance what the response should be. They received pictures with 3 different lines on them, including 1 targeted line. The participants had to answer which lines was equally as long as the targeted line. The person who wasn't aware of the real experiments changed their opinion when the rest of the group did. This shows how people tend to conform to the social norm. So, Solomon Asch's theory could be connected to our social experiment because we could see that people conform to the power of the situation and adapted to the social norm of the situation. For example, when Chloe talked to 2 guys, one guy was more willing at first to give his ice cream to Chloe. Then, after a while, the other guy also gave his ice cream to her, and then he conformed to the situation. Another example is when Chloe talked to a couple, and then the man was at first more willing to give the ice cream the drink to Chloe. But then when he exchanged a look with his wife and saw her negative response, he actually gave the drink to her instead of Chloe. And this is when he conformed to the situation and the social norm of the situation, because he changed his opinion because his wife wanted a drink instead of him giving the drink to Chloe. Okay, so apart from the theory of Solomon Asch, there is another social concept that we can tie to our experiment. In 1981, the famous American psychologist Bibb Latané created a concept which is called the social impact theory. And in brief, this concept studies how human behavior is impacted and depends on other factors around them. And the reason to why this psychologist is so well known is that he was also the establisher of the bystander effect that we have discussed in class. So I will go into more detail with this theory in just a couple of seconds, so stay tuned. Yay!
Okay, so I have chosen to include one specific reaction that we received when we were out doing our social experiment. So I've drawn now, sorry for my drawing skills, but here's me, here's the person that I went up to, the target, and these are the bystanders. Okay, so I remember walking up to this guy and I asked him, I remember that he had a Coke bottle, and I said, "Hi, could I please have a sip of your drink?" And I saw at first that he looked quite startled and surprised, and it seemed as if he was quite unwilling to give me his Coke. But then I saw there were many bystanders, because this was a street with many people, and I realized that many of them reacted to what I said to this target. And when he then saw the bystanders' reaction, it seemed as if he conformed to the situation and almost changed his mind. And now we'll explain in more detail why the bystanders are so important. Okay, so within the social impact theory, Bibb-Latané identified 3 important factors that all influence human behavior. And the first of them is strength. And strength refers to the importance of the people that a bystander is surrounded by. So in our example here, we can see that the impact of the strength is relatively low, because neither me nor the people were of much importance to the target. We were just random people to him. However, if I would have been perhaps the target's boss, or if these would have been his friends, the impact of strength would be much more significant. But considering he didn't know me nor the bystanders, we can draw the conclusion that the impact of the strength was relatively low. And the second one is immediacy. And immediacy refers to the time and space, and more specifically, how close the bystanders are to the target. And in this one here, I haven't drawn that good, but at least from the experiment, we were all very close to the target, and this results in the impact of immediacy being quite high. And the last one is number, which almost says itself. Number refers to how many people are surrounded by the target, or how many people the target is surrounded by. And one can see here that there were even more people than the people that I have drawn up here. So with this being said, it shows that the impact of strength is relatively low. Meanwhile, the impact of immediacy and number was relatively high. Okay, so now I'm just going to try to explain this a little bit more visually. So this is the social forces law. And it looks quite difficult, but it's actually not. So this states that the impact of an event is a function of what we mentioned earlier: strength, immediacy, and number. As we said before, the impact of the strength was relatively low, which results in an overall lower impact. However, considering both immediacy and number still relatively high, it still ends up in an overall high impact for the target, who, because of the bystanders, mostly by the bystanders, but also a little bit because of me, changed his behavior because there were numerous people watching, as well as we were close to the target.
But what would a video be without a conclusion? So in conclusion, we could see that most people said no when we asked them for their food and drink. Only 3 out of 10 people said yes. We could also see that the power of situation was very important in certain cases, and that people tried to conform because of external factors surrounding them, such as the number of people, the strength of the situation, and immediacy. We hope you enjoyed the video! Thank you SB2D and Miss Simster for watching. Now comes the happy dance. Yay!